Snow falls like ash across a forgotten forest, and in the distance a shape emerges, low, silent, watching. A wolf, scarred by time. A girl, grown but haunted. Years ago they walked side by side, bound by something no one could name. Then came the silence, the vanishing, the wound no voice could soothe. She buried his name like a secret. But memory never fades. It waits in the marrow, in the dreams that wake you gasping, in the places your feet carry you without thought. Now, without warning, in the same snow that once brought them together, their paths cross again. He does not growl. She does not speak. But the air between them cracks open like ice under weight, and everything they lost rushes back at once. Each morning, Elara rose before the sun, her hands moving through the same quiet rituals. Stir the fire, boil the water, fold the blanket once laid across two bodies, not one. The village had long stopped asking about the wolf, though now and then a child would whisper of golden eyes in the trees. She said nothing. She swept the floor with steady strokes, but paused too long at the threshold, where paw prints once melted into the snow. Her garden grew neat and wild, a strange harmony she never corrected, as if part of her still tended to the places he'd once wandered. At night, she left the door unlatched. Not out of hope, she told herself, just habit. In the forest, Kale moved like a ghost through his own silence. He hunted with precision, slept curled in hollows dug by memory, and often returned to the edge of the village. Not close, just enough. The scent of firewood, of her, still lived in the air. He never approached. But sometimes, when the wind shifted, he stopped and listened. Something in him remained tethered, something that did not forget. It happened without warning. No howl, no farewell. Just silence, and paw prints vanishing into fresh snow like breath into cold air. Elara stood at the edge of the forest, the morning still around her, a quiet too absolute to be natural. Something inside her refused to believe it. Not yet. She called his name until her voice broke, climbed through thickets, crossed frozen streams, bled from the brambles. But the forest gave nothing back. No trace, no scent, no sound, only a widening absence. Grief came not like thunder, but like fog, slow, creeping, clinging to the edges of everything. She stopped speaking unless necessary. People learned to ask for herbs in silence. Her eyes stayed on the ground now. Her hands never shook, but they never rested either. Inside her, something folded inward. Time became repetition. She lived, but dimly, like a candle sealed in glass. Seasons blurred. She marked years not by holidays, but by the ache that winter always brought. In the woods, Kale roamed far from the warmth he once knew. Each day widened the space between him and what he had lost. He became leaner, faster, silent even in thought. But in the deep of night, when stars pressed against the treetops and the world was still, something flickered in him, a shadow not of prey or danger, but memory. He would lift his head, ears twitching toward the wind, heart tightening in ways he could no longer explain. And then morning would come, and he would be a wolf again. Let's take a brief pause. And I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? Have you ever had someone, human or animal, remember you after years apart? That quiet moment of recognition when the world stands still. If stories like this touch something deep in you, hit subscribe. There's more to come. More heart, more memory, more of what we sometimes lose and somehow find again. It began with a scent, pine smoke and frost, carried by wind through the open shutters of her cottage. Elara had smelled it before, long ago, in a different life. She froze mid-step, the dried herbs in her hands crumbling between her fingers. Then came the sound, distant, low, like breath on snow. Not a voice, not a howl, but something close. That night, sleep would not come. She lit the fire and sat staring into the flames, heart caught in a war between aching hope and the cruelty of memory. The next morning, a child brought her a crude drawing. "Look," he said, "I saw a wolf like this, watching from the hill. Her hands trembled as she held the paper. The eyes were wrong, too large, too human, but they were his. That night, she opened the old wooden box beneath her bed, untouched for years. Inside, his broken collar, a strand of his fur, faded and brittle. The air thickened. Should she go? What if it wasn't him? What if it was? And he didn't remember. Could she bear being forgotten by the one soul who once saw her most clearly? But the questions could not hold her back. Not anymore. The snow fell heavier that evening. Alara wrapped herself in her oldest cloak, the same one she wore the night they met, and walked into the woods without a word. Behind her, the village slept. Ahead, only silence. And still, she went. Because sometimes, even after everything, something deep inside you whispers, he might be waiting. The snow muffled everything, her footsteps, her breath, the pounding of her heart. Trees stood like sentinels, branches heavy with frost, watching. Alara stepped into the clearing without knowing why her feet had brought her here, only that they had. The wind shifted. And then, there he was. At first, just a shape between the trees. Still, massive, wild. His fur was darker now, coarse with weather and time. A faint scar traced the line of his muzzle. His breath curled in the cold, steady and quiet. Her own breath caught. She didn't move, neither did he. Just watched. Long moments passed. Then a step, slow, measured. Snow cracked beneath his weight like a whisper. Another step. His ears twitched, his body low, uncertain. Not in fear, but something older. Hesitation. She felt it too. Her hand rose, barely, instinct before thought, and that's when their eyes met. For a moment, the world dissolved. No village, no years, no absence. Only that gaze, golden and wide, and the shiver that ran through her as it pierced something long buried. He tilted his head, just slightly, the same way he used to when she hummed to him by the fire. Her lips parted, but no words came. They didn't need to. He took one more step, then another, and then, without a sound, he closed the distance between them and pressed his head gently into her side. The weight of him, the heat, the scent, earth and snow and something unmistakably his, hit her like memory crashing through a dam. Her knees gave. She sank into the snow, arms instinctively wrapping around his neck. He did not flinch, only breathed, deep, calm, present. She wept, quietly, openly, into the fur she never thought she'd touch again. And though he made no sound, he stayed there, solid and unmoving, as if to say, I remember too. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Alara no longer looked over her shoulder with hollow eyes. She simply looked, knowing he was there. Some mornings, she'd find tracks in the frost outside her door, a sign he had come close while she slept. Once, she left a worn wool glove on the porch. The next day, it was gone. A week later, it returned, damp, crumpled, but placed gently in the same spot. She smiled then, the first true smile in years. Kyle came closer with time, never breaching the threshold, but sometimes lying in the grass as she worked in the garden. She spoke aloud when no one was near. Not out of madness, but memory. He would tilt his head at the sound of her voice, just like before. One evening, she hummed a melody she hadn't touched in years, and Kyle slowly approached, nose low, ears forward, stopping just beside her chair. She reached out, hand trembling, and touched his shoulder. Not fur or muscle, just warmth. He didn't move. Trust, once fractured, now held again, piece by fragile piece. On the coldest nights, she'd hear him outside, not crying, just being. She began to sleep through till morning, and though no one in the village dared question it, many saw her walking now, with a softness returned to her step. The hollow was still there, but no longer empty. He brought her pine cones sometimes. She left dried meat near the well. little things, proofs. They did not try to reclaim the past. They simply found a way forward, a new rhythm, a shared silence that no longer hurt. Because some griefs do not ask to be cured, only witnessed. And some bonds, once formed, do not break. They become the quiet things we carry, the ones that wait for us, even when we forget how to be found. Some bonds do not fade. They drift beneath the surface, quiet and unseen, waiting, through winters and distance, through silence that feels like forgetting. But when the moment comes, when eyes meet again and something ancient stirs, it is not a beginning and not a return. It is a remembering, a soft, steady pulse beneath the noise of life. He was no longer the pup, she was no longer the girl. But what lived between them, untamed, unspoken, had survived. Not untouched, but unbroken. Because real connection doesn't vanish. It settles into the bones, holds its breath through time, and comes back only when we're ready to feel it again. And when it does, it changes everything. Quietly, completely, forever.